All right, folks, welcome back. This is Unofficially Opinionated. I'm here with Nate and Tim per usual.
Yo.
Yes, the podcast where we talk
I don't know
about
why I did
anything and we share our unofficial opinions. Nate is being gangsta today on the
Gangsta.
video. What's up, guys? What's going on?
That's as gangsta as I get, actually.
Right. He is not a gangster.
Sometimes I can wear a hat backwards, a cap backwards, but you know. I'm good. I'm just settling into my new job. So
Sweet.
yeah, that's it.
Any fun job things happening up and coming?
Oh yes. Let me tell you, like I jumped on my job and gave them 2 references for new clients or whatever, and they were like, "Ooh, we think we want you to hit that up." And I was like, "Okay."
All right.
So I haven't technically hit the ground running because I'm like shadowing, so I guess that would be out of that scenario. But so far so good. Like, you know, whatever. But my trial period, my probation period, it ends in February. So, you know, I'm still you know, going. I'm still like, what do you call it? I'm still, you know, deciding.
Okay.
So
Okay. Cool.
yeah, but I have no intentions of going anywhere. But you know, I don't want to be like, oh, I'm just not going to make a decision. Like I'm just going to just go with it. Like
Right.
I need to make sure that this is the right decision. So
Makes sense. What about you, Tim? What's going on? What's new?
For this week, more like just sick kids and stuff. So nothing's new this week.
You said the kids and stuff?
he said sick kids.
Oh.
But like, you know what? This is the thing. Like, I'll just go. I am the only one here that ain't got kids, right? And this is the thing that they always say. Like you see this on like Instagram and stuff like that. But they always talk about how you know, compare friends that don't have kids with friends that do have kids, and quite often everything that when the friends that do have kids, everything that they have to say is about their kids. Like it's always about the kids. And yeah,
That's
so
how it goes. And what's worse is when people don't have kids. They're like, man, I just don't have any free time. I'm like, really? Especially if they're also single. I'm like, don't talk to me. I remember those days. I would go home on Friday when I had Fridays off. It'd be like home Thursday, and I would just do whatever I want until Monday.
Yep.
Yeah.
I could just maybe I'd watch.
I remember that.
I'd watch 2 anime series in like one day. Just hang out. Whatever. It's cool. Who cares?
Yeah.
Turn the
That just
phone
means
off.
no time management if you're single and you ain't got
Exactly. If you're single, no kids, and don't have any free time, that's a personal problem.
I don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Way too much going on.
So what about you, Chris? What's up this week?
What's up this week?
Or last week, I suppose.
Yeah, what's been going on? Still the same saga of trying to get these new positions approved. Just the slow wheel continues to grind. But yeah, I mean we're getting ready to implement a new medical record system at one of our urgent cares, so we just kicked off that project. So that's going to be fun. What's interesting is I was brought on the project a little bit later than usual. Like I say usual, been there 6 months. Later than I would have liked, but they're looking to get this done by, at the time of this recording, they're looking at end of March. So that's like 8-week implementation window, which is technically possible per the vendor.
Oh, I was going to... Okay.
But we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, because you're new to the company, so you're not really. You don't really know how it work, but just technically, normally these things do not work.
Typically, 2 months to implement any software is very aggressive, no matter the scale. And they want to also do like a full data migration, of like years of data.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Pile
but
that
do they have
on.
They have a third-party vendor, you're saying?
Yeah, they have someone that'll do it from. Well, so the system is coming in. They will migrate the data on their side. And they said 4 to 6 weeks from the time that we give them the data. So we have to extract it from the current system. And that's where we probably need somebody to help us with that, because there's a reason we're leaving the system. It's not great with data, so it's just gonna
Well, I'm
be
glad y'all stepping up.
yeah, it's gonna be real fun on top of all the other stuff I'm already doing. So it's great,
Yay.
exciting, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun. So
Challenges.
that's always. We had a couple people leave, so I'm kind of absorbing a little bit of that workload a little bit. But yeah, it's just same old same, different day. But yeah,
I guess
just trying to still kind of stick with some of my intentions for the year about being more intentional.
Yeah, how is that going? Because you were saying you wanted to be more intentional.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's going better at work for sure, and it's becoming more and more of a necessity. just as more and more stuff gets piled on, I was like, look, I got to really get more intentional about how I'm spending my time, organizing my email. So I actually am going to do a little bit of reading this week about just email organization because I'm terrible with email. Like it's just. I don't
preaching to the choir.
I've tried folders and flags, and it's just like never ending. So I'm like, okay, look, I gotta.
There's just too many. Like at my job, just currently, like when we, like I started with at least 100 emails.
Right. It's just
in my inbox. Like I was just like, I can't. And like every day it's another like 5, 10, 15, 20, like it just responding back and forth and stuff like that. No, I understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Tim, do you have any email tips? Or are you in the same boat?
No, I just read all my emails. Like I spend a good.
This guy.
You're one of those efficient
This guy. Do you get a lot of email, Tim?
Yes. Come on now. I mean, when anybody that really does IT, you get all the spew of email.
Yep.
Just,
I can see
the
that.
spew.
Mm-hmm.
You get the HR stuff. You get the everything's from your tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Then so I just sit and read through things and I clear out every day. That's what I do. That's the thing I do first thing in the morning. I just go through my emails.
I am too action oriented to do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like, okay, do I start from the top and the bottom of the top? Do I start with the most recent or do I go with the oldest? Then I'm like, wait a minute, now I got to go do this. And then someone comes to my office. Hey, can you do this? I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, let me do this real quick. Oh, actually,
and that's the worst.
And then there's a meeting on my calendar I didn't put there. That's like at 3:00 today. I'm like,
yep. Mm-hmm. Luckily for me, I don't know why, but just things always end up working out. So luckily that's a thing. So like if I haven't put something in the calendar or something like that, I am convinced that someone's going to come by and talk to me about it eventually. I'll be like, I totally forgot that. Let me put that in the calendar.
Yeah.
Or something
that's like that. I always accidentally trip into the hole I'm supposed to be in.
Yep.
No, I can't do that.
Yep. That's exactly what happened. So
I mean, one thing I used to do was I had time on my calendar that was every day that was just blocked off for like doing emails or for like wrap up at the end of the day. And I used just to be on there and to be blocked off so people couldn't put like a meeting over it. I should probably do that again at this new place because I haven't done that yet. I need to just kind of block out some time in the calendar so that people don't just overrun it because
well, I've been telling myself the same thing. I have to clear out my email. I haven't been able to now, but I will. So anyways.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough griping about email. Onto our topic for the day. I wasn't sure what to call our topic for the day, but we're going to be talking about historical Black characters, specifically kind of around the Regency period in England. Now, this came up because I know at least Nate and I did watch Bridgerton. It's not just for the ladies.
No, I love me some Bridgerton.
But in looking at the show, it's brought up some different kind of conversations and topics around kind of how it portrays different people. So maybe Nate, can you start off with kind of tell us kind of what is Bridgerton? Like what's it about? What's kind of the general premise of the show, and kind of how it's set?
Yeah, it's kind of like a Jane Austen story. So Pride and Prejudice, those types of stories. So very much, very, very similar type of it. I think there were books, and now they've been, and Shonda Rhimes has turned them into this series. I think there's supposed to be 6 or 7 books according to the Bridgerton kids. So, anyways, it's called Bridgerton because it's the Bridgerton family, and it's about basically during the Regency era they were, they were wealthy family that owned, I think, did they own land? They owned something. I forgot exactly what it is. It's been a
Yeah, I
while
think
since I've seen
any
that
of
show.
the kind of aristocrats would have had some kind of land ownership because they had a title, so they definitely
Yeah, they had
had
a time, but
lands.
was it excuse me, was it land or was it? I remember they were talking mines. Oh, but I think that was the scam.
Yeah, that was
Supposedly,
someone else had
right? That was a
a
scam.
scam
Okay, so
mines in
yeah,
America.
they yeah. So yeah. Oh, actually, they did own lands. Okay, yeah, yeah. So, anyways, yeah. So there was this wealthy family. The father died, and the kids were basically supposed to be married off, basically like how they assumed it was back in the day. I don't know if that was how it happened, but that's basically what they were saying. What the series is about, marrying people, marrying them off, and so each season is supposed to go by each Bridgerton child. But the exception here is just kind of like in Jane Austen, is that they were kind of marrying for love rather than, bought and purchased. Some of
Right.
that still happens where they're like marrying for riches or titles or power or whatever. But these are trying to, in the Bridgerton family, they're trying to marry for love, even though like Anthony Bridgerton is kind of still just like, well, at the beginning he was like, he was trying to marry off his oldest sister, um to someone who just, you know had a good name and stuff like that, and not necessarily someone she wanted to marry and stuff like that. So that's basically what it is. It's like a, Jane Austen thing, but the difference here is, also the difference is that they have a lot of different ethnicities in this series, right? So, like the Duke of Hastings is of African descent of some sort. So, well, African, like he is black of some sort. We don't know if he's like Caribbean or
Right.
if he's African or something like that or whatever. But yeah, and then and then the woman that basically took care of him was a duchess, or is a duchess. Sorry, widowed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, she's widowed, and she is also of some. Her skin is darker, like black. We don't know from what ethnicity. And then the queen herself is also black, her Queen Charlotte. So that's kind of the thing that had the people talking, is like that this type of ethnicity didn't exist back in the Regency area in England, and even amongst us three or four, I think maybe if Steve was talking with us, I don't recall. There were some doubts as to where black people, whether that's pandering, or whether actual black people did live in London, or just in England in general, during that time. So
Yeah.
that's why it was interesting. Since we're going into, and since we're in Black History Month, I was like, well, let's take a look at this in detail. Like, let's figure. Well, maybe not in detail because we're not historians or anything
No,
like
we are
that.
not.
But like,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's check it out. Let's
We
see
will.
if
Yeah,
this
we
was
will.
actually a
Google it.
thing or if they are just
Yeah,
pandering.
we'll
So
unofficially dig in. But yeah, I mean, to your point, in watching
unofficially,
the show, it reminds you of, um, like kind of oftentimes we see like these future utopian societies where like it's kind of just like everyone's kind of mixed together,
yep.
like Star Trek. If you watch The Expanse, very similar kind of thing where it's just kind of at a point it's kind of
Yeah.
just everyone just kind of all muddled together. So it kind of looks
Yeah.
that way in watching Bridgerton because it's not just people that are black; it's Asian,
Asian, yep.
Southern Asian,
Indian.
Eastern Asian.
Hmm.
It's all kinds of
Yep.
looks you see, and the question is, how accurate is that portrayal
Right.
of this time period for this particular class of society? Because the show doesn't focus on like the common folk. It's really focusing around kind of the aristocracy, people that have titles, people
Right.
with royal blood, kind of that class of people. So that's
Yeah.
where we kind
Well,
of had the rub a little bit, I think.
yeah, I mean, this is true. And so, well, the first thing that I want to discuss is, so for example, like in in Jane Austen, if I recall, so it's been years since I've seen Pride and Prejudice, for example, but I don't recall any just similitude of a black person in those movies, right? I don't recall that. And then I was reading something. I don't know what I was reading online. This doesn't really matter, but they were saying they were calling this type of whitewashing, you know. But then everyone comes to the argument, oh, there weren't black people in there at that, you know, in the area at that time, which I was with the first thing that I wanted to address, because apparently black people, well, obviously they had the slave trade, so you would have seen black people anyway, regardless of whether it was an aristocracy or not. Like, you would have seen black people. So to make a movie, you know, a period drama, and this then just completely omitting black people, I think is just very erroneous. That is a clear, for me, that's a clear sign of whitewashing. You know, just like, oh, you just wanted white people, or you know, like, if you're gonna sit here, like, don't, for me, I'm just like, don't complain about the fact that we're adding black people here when it's actually black people did exist, and you're gonna call it, you know, you're saying, oh, you're just trying to pander, I suppose, when actually you all did the same thing, but the inverse back in the day. You know, had you stayed true to your roots, maybe we wouldn't even be here. Like, maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation, but you didn't. You all wanted it to look like something else. And like, I saw this Instagram reel, I think, of some guy who was talk he was talking to himself, right? So he was acting like he was interviewing some other person, but it was really himself. And they were talking about the mermaid, because we did the Little
All
Mermaid
right.
drama, and he was like, yeah, people just don't. So the antagonist was like, yeah, they just want to always change things around to make it suit them, and blah 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 blah. And then the other guy, he was like, uh-huh. And he was like looking up above him, and the above where he was sitting was a picture of white Jesus.
Yeah, I saw that. He's like, right. Mm-hmm.
He's like, right. Mm-hmm. And he was
Mm.
so that's what I'm saying. Like, you gotta, if you're gonna argue, make sure that you are understanding, you know, both sides of the both sides of the coin.
For sure.
So
As we were looking to do some research, you know, you pulled up some things. I looked at a few other things, and at least as far as London during this time period. So the Regency time period we're talking about, it's really, you know, there's different ways to look at it, but they tend to kind of look at it as this one kind of period when there was a regent in charge in England, right? And that was what it was like, 1807.
it's like 1811 or something like that, right? Or
Oh, I had
something.
it in my notes, then I lost it, moving everything around. That's what I get for being.
Wait, I think I had it.
Here
I
it is.
think I had it up
1811
here.
to 1820 is when.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So during that time, King George's son was kind of the regent, and then the Queen was kind of helping kind of lead the country at that time. So around that time, there was estimated about between 20 and 30,000, you know, black people in London at that time. Now, that's not saying all those people were out there, you know, in high society, but at least that you would have seen them, if nothing else, in the background, walking behind the camera somewhere, right? So they were at least
and
around.
Also, a good point to that is that they were slaves. There were slaves, sorry, but they weren't all slaves.
Correct.
Some of them were what they call wage gainers or something like that. Some of them were some of them were servants, but not enslaved servants. They were just servants. And then there were some that were actually business owners, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is just in London too, by the way.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
You something to say, Tim, besides yeah?
Yeah, because I thought you were
I was waiting. I was waiting.
I thought you were going somewhere with that. Like, he's like,
No, I was
gonna cut you off.
I was just agreeing with you. In my head, I was gonna say, what I said in my head was, yeah, we're not talking about the hard edge slavery like in America or anything like that. We're just talking about what happened in London, which I don't exactly know, but I know they had stuff going on, and like you guys are saying, every black person there wasn't this royalty or or rich or anything like that, so like like I didn't watch Bridgerton, because I just
Shame.
never. Shame. Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably because it's not about high school children, but you know.
Oh, what, so then,
why you say that like that?
You say that, gosh.
Why you say that like that?
Oh my god!
I mean, I know you guys have
Listen,
a
Tim,
particular
I got
type
your
of
back,
show
okay,
that you
Tim?
guys like.
I know how. Listen, we don't know. It's just a thing, okay?
Tim will get up with his Bridgerton high. He'll be like, "Oh, that's my kind of show right there." Bridgerton,
no,
the Academy days.
Well,
no. So, okay, so like when I saw the trailer for Bridgerton, right? Okay, it was like there. I guess maybe I'm in the middle where I don't know if it's exactly like pandering or anything like that, right? Because all like it's like you guys said, there's all types of people there, and they're all but none of the stuff that was going on at that time is evident. So it's like when you have black folks in show, is either you have black folks and they're all rich and happy and stuff, right? Or you have black folks and they're slaves. But you don't show both.
well, you can show both because it was a thing.
Do
So
they
for
show both?
in Bridgerton,
Yeah.
yes, they show. Well, they don't, like Chris said, it's not about the common population.
But there
This
would
is
be slaves still around serving
there
and
were slaves still around, but
working
they
in the
don't show that,
background.
right?
Yeah,
Just
that's what I'm
like in
saying. They
Jane
don't show that.
Austen, in Jane
Mhm.
Austen's books and stuff like that, she doesn't show that either. But I did read up on Jane Austen a little bit, and they were like, yeah, she probably had some very close interminglings with people of different races, not just black people, just you know um, Asians as well. I forgot whom else. They said probably whoever it was that wrote it. I can't tell you. I can look it up again and tell you the link. But like, they were like she probably did have some close interminglings with them. Why it wasn't written was probably just because of the way the world was working back then, where they were just whitewashing everything. So that's probably why she didn't write them into. Apparently, she did start writing a book, and it had put in a black character, but she died before she finished it.
Mm.
So I mean, look at that. Like, like this is, I don't know. But anyways, the excuse me. In Bridgerton, they do show like what they would call the common people, but very rarely. But you do see them of all different races as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, from I guess from top to bottom, it's very much a rainbow of people. So it doesn't look like what you might expect it to look like if it was going to be historically accurate to a T, but
Right.
it's plausible if you stretch it a little bit, and kind of squint and look at it a certain way.
Yeah. So yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to say specifically around the idea of Queen Charlotte being black. So, and I think this is still kind of debated historically, but it does appear that Queen Charlotte, the actual historical figure, she was descended from a particular kind of aristocratic family from Portugal, and that particular line of that family was seemingly known to have African roots, right? So it would then go to say that, but that even in some of her paintings of her, she looks like she's got some percentage non-white, that's kind of in there somewhere. So, it's not outrageous to think that she would have had some black ancestry at some point in her history, given the context of bloodline and also the paintings of how she is portrayed.
Yeah, and then, I mean, just think about it as well. I mean, these people. Okay, think about America, right? And they had the slave trade, and you had those masters. Sorry about that. Those masters who were like sleeping with their slaves, right, and having mixed children. They would have been doing the same thing in England.
Right now, the thing is, what strikes me would be oftentimes, illegitimate children are not owned by like the official family, right? They don't get the name, they don't get the title. This is the whole thing on Game of Thrones, right? If the bastards like are not part of what's going on, you got to try to make your way in. So, you know, even though you are of the blood, you're not at the same stats. Even like, I think it was Thomas Jefferson had all kind of children, right? And so he would take care of them, but they weren't the same level as if they were kind of natural born, like white children to like his wife.
Right.
You know,
but this is my, so I mean, you were on Queen Charlotte, but I was bringing back to the point where they would have had to exist. You would have had to see these people just in general. You would have had to see them, but we didn't. So that's, I guess, the bone that I have to pick, is that we're not seeing them at all. And now to the question of whether they were in what they considered high society. Yeah. So we don't know if it does look like Queen Charlotte was black. Okay. Like she had some black in her, or some African or something in it does. But then we also, like, I was just doing a little bit of research, and we came across this lady, Dido, I guess, or Dido Elizabeth Bell. And apparently she is of Caribbean, I think, like Black Caribbean descent of some sort, if I'm not mistaken. She was born in the 1700s, and she was what they consider. Wait, let me look it up because I found it. She was considered the first. This is from a site from BBC. If you all want the links that we found, that we can share them with you. It's not a problem. But she was considered one of Britain's first black aristocrats, right? So she actually did exist. We know what her ethnicity was, and she was there. So Bridgerton is set in 1813. She was born in the 1700s, meaning that she was a black aristocrat before the Regency era hit, right? Which means it is highly plausible that there were other black people in the upper class in whatever respect. Granted, like Chris was saying, they were probably, like in Bridgerton, they just kind of take artistic license. Is that what this called? Artistic license?
I would say so, yeah.
Where, they have a duke, and then they have a excuse me, and a duchess, who are both black. So it's probably not, there probably wouldn't be as many, but they probably definitely did exist. I'm thinking that they did exist. So
yeah, and I think to Tim's point of, even if they did exist in this way, there definitely would, even if we take it as it looks in the show, if you were going to be super accurate, there'd be a lot more attention around race than is shown in the show. Right? In the show, it's not really an issue at all, except I think season 2, when they're discussing kind of, it's kind of about their heritage being from India in subtext a little bit, right? They don't outright say it in a racist way, but it's kind of like, well, you're not really from here, and and it's kind of a subtext. I didn't
actually get that. That's funny,
right? But yeah, but I mean, they were Indian, so it was kind of a interesting way that was kind of portrayed. But I would assume, I think it's a fair assumption that even if it was this racially mixed at that time, I think it's probably not quite that degree, it would still be, given that time period, it wouldn't be as comfortable as it was on the show. Everyone
exactly.
It's just getting along and it's all cool. Everyone's fine.
Exactly. Right? It's like, where did racism come from?
Racism?
Yeah, whatever. Like, we're all equal.
What's going
on? Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we got to take this. It's a TV show, so we aren't going to sit here and act like it's like.
I know.
Completely historically accurate. But to the question of whether it's pandering, like they just get like what do you call that? Netflix. They just came out with they came out with a film called Persuasion, which I just watched last night because, well, I love like Jane Austen type movies and shows and stuff, which is why I like Bridgerton. So, and this is similar, but the like in this movie, like, so the main character is white. She falls in love with a white person, but she is courted by, or semi courted by, an someone of Asian descent, and then also she apparently was in love with this guy of black descent who was, had a name for himself, you know. So like they, excuse me, along the same lines, they were definitely working with the fact that I think that there were multiple ethnicities. Also, there was somewhere I read that a lot of black people were on the seas, like with England, but they were
Like the Moors.
I don't know. Thank you for bringing up something I don't know about. but they were just like they were sea captains and stuff like that. So, anyways, I forgot why I brought that up.
No, it was probably the Moors because when you read the history, one thing I've noticed, the Moors were everywhere. They was everywhere. They was in the Philippines. They was in Rome.
I mean, I don't even know who the Moors are, to be
I mean, I'm
honest.
a Moor, so I think it's probably us.
Whatever.
I mean, it might have. Listen, your name might have come from.
It could have.
Unlikely. I'm sure my name came from some European owners. But
yeah, but I'm saying, where did their name come from?
Yeah, maybe if you go back far enough, right? But yeah, I do notice that a lot of times in history, I don't know if it's just sometimes shorthand or people just assumed, but the Moors are mentioned a lot of places. To your point, Tim. Now, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, do you just mean black? Like, do you guys just really like you just assume they're like back then? Oh yeah, they're Moors. Like, no, just because they're black doesn't mean they're Moors. Like, every African isn't a Moor, but
right? Yeah.
Anyway, that's how I feel about it sometimes.
Yeah, I was listening to the historian talk about in the Philippines and how the Moors mixed strongly in the Philippines, and they there was some war that the Moors helped the Philippines out with, or something like that, or some skirmish. Um, so yeah, the Moors were they was all over the place.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Okay, so for people who don't know who the Moors are, including me, let's see, Google National Geographic says, what was the race of the Moors? Derived from the Latin word Morus, the term was originally used to describe Berbers and other people from the ancient Roman province of Mauritania in what is now North Africa. Over time, it was increasingly applied to Muslims living in Europe.
Yeah.
That doesn't really answer.
Well, yeah. I guess my point, like, it could be specific or it could be used generically, right? So
yeah, I guess.
African Muslims.
Kind of like black Muslim folk from this time period.
Yeah.
Basically.
Moors.
Right.
Okay, but I don't know if these people were like the captains I were talking about were.
But like, the reason why I said that because they had to be because they was all over the planet. So they was out there on the oceans.
I mean, they didn't have to be. Like they could have been there and did not been the captains.
But no. I mean,
that works perfectly fine too.
I mean,
well, listen, I don't know, but I'm just saying.
They was
look. If it's this time period and they're not slaves and they're black, then we call them Moors. Okay. Yes. And we assume they're Muslim.
Is that the
Muslim
rule?
Free blacks.
Right here. Free blacks that follow Islam are Moors. Period.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Now I had a question for you, Tim. So taking aside, how accurate it is. I know you haven't seen Bridgerton, but you've heard us describe what it's like, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel for you? Does it feel? Well, I guess I'm not going to see it. I'm not going to put anything into your mind. How does the idea of Bridgerton make you feel? I guess.
So, okay, I'll say this, and I can't think of that movie. All right, but they made 2 versions of it.
Pride and Prejudice.
No, nothing.
You say no. Try again.
The other version had Michael Jackson in it.
Talking about the Wiz?
Yes.
Oh, the Wiz.
So,
this guy, you just went all off into
he's on down the road. Yeah.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. Okay, so you have the Wizard of Oz, and then you have the Wiz, right? I feel sometimes people are like, "Hey, what would happen if we had combined those two movies?" And that's what they do. Everybody's happy. Nothing's about not there's no tension about race or anything. It's like, "Hey, we're all rich. Let's hang out." That I don't I mean like I don't get it because like like my mind it says okay, and I said this earlier. Okay, even though people were rich, ignorance still persisted. There were still hostilities when it came to like different races and stuff like that. Yes, there were rich and there are rich Africans and people of other descents that lived in these cultures and stuff, right? But well, like they wasn't they wasn't like unless if it was a woman maybe, you know. No, I'm
So
going the wrong area with
let's
that.
try this, Tim.
Yeah.
Let's take for granted that we agree that it's not accurate
Hmm.
historically, right? Like it's not historical fiction, like true to reality. It's
Okay.
a it's a romanticized, fantasized version of what it could have been had things been different, right? So
Yes,
that
that's
so
what it
that
is.
being the case, how do you feel about it?
It's fiction. I mean, sci-fi. Same way.
But
It's
I mean,
okay.
you watch like fiction.
Yeah, but I watch stuff like Star Trek where that stuff is like, yes, they recognize this is how things were. It's supposed to be a more of an optimistic future. But they still recognize that everything that happened with black folks and all this stuff that was happened.
But
It was
Star Trek
cool.
rarely talks
But
about race or deals with that kind of stuff. Like,
Deep Space Nine,
okay, generally when it's about race, it's about different like species often, and
yeah,
maybe that's a
yeah,
proxy to
yeah.
talk about race. But as far as the human race, typically sci-fi portrays it as we're all kind of one thing, right? Which
Well, because they're
that,
trying to,
that could be the case in the future. It doesn't have to be,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
They just
Like,
choose to portray it that way.
yeah. Optimistic, man.
And so
no, okay.
that part doesn't bother you, but you are bothered if we look backwards and kind of do the same
Yes,
thing.
yeah, because it seems like it's like okay. I mean, it doesn't bother me, right?
It
As
bothers
much as
you.
He's
it's
like, it
with
doesn't bother me so much as I
no, no.
Yes,
never
All right,
want
I
to
I was
see it
gonna.
hate it.
It
ever.
doesn't.
I think it's stupid.
No, no. It doesn't bother me as much as it looks off.
But
All right.
but this is why we're
We
talking about this, right? Because
Yeah,
Bridgerton isn't. I
it
mean,
looks
it
off.
is fantasy, but it's not off. It might look off because of like cultivated ignorance, but it's not off, right? So
But it's
like,
not exact. But it's not right either.
well, none of it's right. Like for example, Jane Austen isn't right either,
Correct.
right?
No, no, no. What I mean. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, what I'm saying is
Well,
this,
do you like
and
period pieces at all?
I do like period pieces.
Like which
Okay,
ones do you like? Give me an
I
example of
watch
one.
them with my wife,
Give me.
but
Give, it's okay. You can watch them
huh?
alone and
It's all
own up
good.
to
No,
it.
like
We
the
won't judge
period
you.
pieces I've watched are the okay. The
We
period
won't judge
pieces
you on
I've
here.
watched are the typical ones, like Pride and Prejudice. What's that? This, and I can't think of the other one about some girl. She lives in this house, and
Anne of Green
there's a sea
Gables.
cap. Yes, thank you.
Is it?
So
I've never seen it.
no, no, no. Well, no, it's about a sea captain or something like that, and and
Pippi
I think he was.
Longstocking.
Pirates of the Caribbean?
I can't remember. No,
No.
no, 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 no. No. Anyways,
Jungle
I have to ask my
Cruise?
wife. Okay, you are not.
The Rock? Was The Rock in it? Because
Just
that was
say,
Jungle Cruise.
just say anyways, anyways.
Okay. Yes.
So,
Okay. Pride and
all right,
Prejudice. We got one at least. Go
wait,
ahead.
yeah, we'll just stay there.
Yeah.
All right, so even I know that Pride and Prejudice wasn't correct, right?
Mm. Question: did you know that Pride and Prejudice wasn't correct before I told you that it wasn't correct?
I've always known it wasn't correct because, so when I think, okay, personally, when I think about England, right, back then, the way I see it in my mind
Was a bunch of
is
white folks.
no, it was a bunch of white people, right? And there were some other people of affluent nature. I mean, affluent, ability mixed in, but it wasn't a lot. It was nowhere near how it was portrayed in Bridgerton. Okay,
But you
Bridgerton
didn't
was
even
the
watch
Wiz.
Bridgerton. You don't know how it's
No, I
portrayed in
saw the
but
Bridgerton.
Tim,
trailer.
here's
I saw the trailers.
here's the question.
Okay, that was the Wiz to me.
We already agree that it's not perfectly accurate, right? It's definitely leans more towards a rainbow utopian kind of look to it, right? It's
Sesame Street.
plausible, but we agree it's not accurate. So I'm curious
No,
why it bothers you so much, because we agree it's not accurate.
no, it doesn't bother me.
It's not trying to be accurate. It's trying to be fun and
Yeah, yeah. No,
enjoyable.
no, I get that. It's not. It's okay. So, and that's how I take it. You know, like if like off the top, I just look at it. It's like, okay, they're trying to incorporate people into this and make it fun, right? But like it's just like I said. It's not that it's not that it gets at me or whatever. It's just off putting because it's like, oh, they just went the full Sesame Street color coordinate. Everybody's in there. It's just everybody. All
I mean,
all the
but
Muppets.
this is what I don't understand is because we know that Jane Austen and all those other ones are false as well, but you are
Yeah.
more comfortable watching those which are false and have come out before Bridgerton than you are watching Bridgerton, which is also
No, no,
false,
no,
but in the other direction.
no. Okay, so here's the thing. It's not that I'm more comfortable. All right. It's just so you go all this time. I mean, okay. Well, when you think of what is England?
A
Is that an African
country?
country?
No, but we're not looking. What?
Is it a, is it is it a, is it is it a is it an Asian country?
I
So I'm
mean,
getting to a point
I
here.
think
yes,
I think the answer is no.
listen. I am
Okay.
following.
Okay. Is it like was it like the multicultural country
Yes.
of no, it was not.
Yes, it was
No, it
too.
wasn't.
See,
No.
this is
See?
exactly my point, Tim. This is
No.
exactly my point. Excuse me. Wow. The UK had trades with all of these different countries,
They
right?
had trades with the countries, but look, put it like this, okay? If that was the case, okay, then why do you have so much hostility with African countries? Hell, when the Queen died, you didn't hear nothing from the African countries. But
That's because Trevor
okay,
Noah was like,
I mean, no, I'm saying there were things going on. Okay,
but
how many
just because the African countries didn't celebrate didn't mourn, I guess, when the Queen died, doesn't mean. I mean, it doesn't mean that every black person in England felt or
no what
felt
it
like
tells me.
vengeance or something like that.
No, okay, but um, I can't think of the name of the movie. But what's his name from Star Wars? The yelling black guy,
Oh
screaming black
yeah,
guy.
what's
Yeah,
his name?
He
Forgot
made
his
a
name.
movie.
John Boyega.
He was in a
Yeah,
movie. Yeah,
Boyega. Yeah.
he was in a movie that was filled with racism and in England. Okay, they was almost like Black Panthers. I mean, there was their stuff. I just think like this is like it's like this all it is. Like if you're trying to, like I know it's wrong. Okay, it just looks like to me it's like they just threw everybody in there, and I don't think that's what England looked like. So I
Okay,
don't take it as
okay.
that. I
I
just
think
take
we
it
agree
as
with you that it didn't look like that
yeah,
specifically. I guess
yeah.
that the question is, it seems to rub you the wrong way, and it
No,
does not
I
rub
don't
us the
care.
wrong way.
Right,
I don't
because
care.
what
I take it for what it is, and it is they were trying to show a different version of England. But England, I
which
don't. Hmm?
I feel like they were trying to show. Okay, so this. Okay, listen. I feel like both Jane Austen, which you said you like Pride and Prejudice and those types of
I see.
movies.
I seen it.
You said that you liked it, and you liked some other movie that you were trying to remember, where we couldn't think of the name, but
Okay.
because you were saying that you liked period pieces, and these are the types
Oh
of
yeah.
movies that you like. That's what you said.
Yeah.
So I think that personally, I think that there's some sort of bias that you have going on, because Jane Austen, even though I like Jane Austen, I am very well aware of the lack of black people in that show, the lack of ethnicity in that show. We all, I don't know if we all know, but I think we all know that there were multiple ethnicities in England in the Regency era. There were multiple. Now the bigger question is how many of them were in aristocracy. We don't know. We brought up a couple, but we don't really know. But they didn't show any in Jane Austen's books or in her movies, right? At all, which we know now is false. In Bridgerton, they seem to be swinging the other way, where they're putting up, multiple um, people
Exaggerated
of
amounts.
multiple ethnicities and aristocracy, which we also don't know was a thing. So between the two, we might get some semblance of truth. But the funny thing is, for me, concerning you, is that you're okay with the whitewashing, but you're not really okay
No,
with the blackwashing.
don't. Okay, so look, don't paint me in that picture. Okay, what I'm saying is this. Okay, when you talk about like Jane Austen stuff, right?
Yeah.
That okay. What I was trying to say was this. Unfortunately that's kind of what I got used to.
Mm.
Sure.
Okay,
That
and
is
then
something I understand. Yep.
with this is like a pop of color on a white wall. You just stare at it like something's off on that. Just it's like somebody just threw a whole bunch of colors on this white wall, and then you're supposed to be like, yeah, that's fine. No, that's what I meant by it's a little off-putting. It's not like it was bad
I
or anything like that. It was just like it's like they went from like extreme, like whereas everybody was rich and white and all this stuff, to the other extreme,
Yeah,
to the
that's
Regency.
exactly
Yeah.
what I
It's like
said.
Sesame Street. So it's
Yeah.
all colorful and everybody. It's like wait. It's nothing. It's not. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it was different.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead, Nate.
no, I was just going to say, but this is why I said I think you have like an unconscious bias, and the reason I think that that's the case, and I think that's really what you just said, is because you got used to it. I got used to it as well. We all got used to it because we all got used to seeing Jesus white, right? I
No,
mean,
it's not.
Jesus white.
It's
Well, that's true
no,
Well,
too.
also
it's
that.
not that. Like okay, like is this okay, like it's not that. Like I said, it is off-putting. I'm okay with that, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But like say if I was to make a piece, right?
Yep.
It's not like I'm some I'm not gonna do that. But
Hey, listen,
I
we
would
don't know. Okay, you might just come out
Why
the
not?
woodwork, write this masterpiece.
but I would I would
I could see that.
I might like incorporate you know some things that like I'll probably have some slaves in there somewhere. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would have like even though people those people are rich and they're aristocrats, right?
Right.
Um, but amongst the aristocrats, I'm not gonna act like they're all just colorblind and they don't see no, they grew up aristocrats. It's not like they go outside their door and they see and and they're just like, oh, once you become rich, you turn white. I'm not gonna say
So,
that. It's like
but so Tim, it sounds like you would want to make something that you believe is historically accurate, right?
yeah, a little
But
more.
but
Not
but that's
exaggerated,
not
but a
what
little
this
more.
is even
I know
supposed
that's
to
not what
be.
this is. Yeah, I get that, and
Like
I'm saying
neither
that
of them.
that's
Right.
what.
Yeah, well, yeah. Neither of them have the purpose of being
Well,
historically accurate. The purpose of them is to entertain people.
It's entertainment. Yeah,
well,
exactly.
no. I mean, here's the other thing. Here, like, um, yeah, I understand that neither one of them is accurate. I get that, right? It's just what it is one of them I got used to,
Hmm.
and the other one is different. Neither one of them are right.
So I have a question. What would you do? What would you do if you saw a historical piece with nothing but black folks in it in England, nothing but black folks, not one white person. The king, the queen, all the aristocrats were all black people. What would you do? Would you watch it?
I'll be looking for Black Panther.
We what?
Well,
What,
I'm
what are you looking
because
for,
I mean
Black
that's what.
Panther?
I guess
You're
he
looking
would
for the
assume
White
that
Panther?
it was in Wakanda. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, because like like unless you're gonna tell me that there was a period that was real where the king and the queen of England were black
So you wouldn't be able
and
to
full
enjoy it
frogs,
because it would be too different for you.
and then after that slavery happened.
Because I think a lot of people reacted the same way, even though Hamilton is very popular. Have you guys seen? Have you guys seen Hamilton at all?
No.
No.
You
Well,
keep
yeah.
asking us, and the answer
So what's
continues.
interesting about it is at least the original Broadway production. I think even most of the productions is pretty much almost all actors of color. Which
Mm-hmm.
so George Washington is black, Hamilton's black, all Madison's like all of them are played by people of color as the actors, even though we know historically they weren't, right?
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
it gives it a different feel and it's enjoyable, and I enjoy it even though I know George Washington wasn't a black man, but it's still interesting and impactful to see him as a black man singing. It's I enjoy it knowing full well like this is fake because it's not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be real, but it still feels good. And yes, it's different, and it does initially have like, man, this is really odd because I'm not used to this. Then I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
then I'm into it and I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason why I'm like I'm asking Tim all these questions. The reason why I'm asking you this is because I have, um, we've all kind of dealt with it. I mean, we literally just did the Little Mermaid show. We also were talking about. I think I brought up the what what is that with the brandy?
Oh, they did.
the Cinderella.
Yeah. I remember that back in the
Yeah,
day.
they back in the day, where they just had everybody. They had a
Mm.
Asian,
Snow White. No, was it
Yeah,
prince.
Snow
like
White?
No, it was
the races
Cinderella.
didn't make any sense for her
Cinderella.
parents because they wouldn't have had this black
It
child. The
didn't.
whole thing was just
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it was all just
Yeah.
all kinds of,
That's a good.
when we
Yeah.
talked about that. But the reason why it's so important for me is because I think that we do develop these biases. We're used to this one thing, and I think that we all, especially Black people, have to learn to kind of think out. Like we have to start thinking for ourselves. Like we can't be looking at this. I mean, like, okay, let me ask you all a question. Do you think that Jesus was white? Just yes or no. Do you
no.
think that Jesus was white? Tim, do you think
No.
that Jesus was black?
No.
It depends what you consider black, but no, not really.
Like black, like us black?
Again, it considers what you consider black.
What do you
So
African American? Do you think that Jesus was
Do he
African
look like
American?
us?
no,
Approximately.
no.
No.
Like okay, yeah, right. Like I don't believe okay. I've never gotten to the whole concept of like I used to get into the whole concept of what I thought Jesus looked like, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I just came down to the point where the images that we see ain't him. But as far as what he actually looks like, idea.
Well, the Bible actually describes what he's
Yes.
supposed to look like, right?
Yes. Woolly hair, fiery red eye. Yeah.
It said he has bronze skin, hair like wool, but
Yeah.
we also don't know if that's like a transformation or if that was like his earthly
Suntan.
appearance. But we agree that he wasn't white,
Yes.
right? Because he would have died in that desert. Okay.
Yeah.
And he wasn't black because I mean he did live in Africa for a little bit, right? If you
Mhm.
all remember that. He did live in
But
Africa,
Africa is
but he went to Africa, right? So he was born. We don't we It seems like his parents weren't of African descent. They just went to Africa and then they came back, right? So
Mhm.
we don't think that he was. But we had to make that distinction. We had to think about that, right?
Mhm.
I know that there's a lot of like pictures now going up with Jesus with dreadlocks and stuff. Or well, not now. I mean, back in the day
Yeah.
when I
Right.
was growing up, Jesus with dreadlocks and stuff like that.
I don't believe
And
that
these are
either.
things that we have to think. We have to recognize. And I really just like. I would like people to do more of that instead of just like being um instead of just being like the more kind of, I guess, on the whole white side of it, looking at the fact that it was all multicultural. Even if we haven't seen it in movies, it was all multicultural. There was never a time where I don't think that there was ever a time where every single race was only in their region. I think there, or not race, but ethnicity was only in their
Mm-hmm.
region. You know, like
Mm-mm.
I think there was never a time where Africans were only ever in Africa or Europeans were only ever in Europe, you know, except for maybe the Native Americans. But
Mm-mm.
they were never only in, well, I think they were probably only in the Americas because I'm not sure how they would have gotten over.
It depends how far back you
But they
go, right?
might
They
have.
got here somehow,
Yeah, it
so
depends on how far. Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah,
they,
so,
they didn't
Yeah.
grow. They didn't grow out of the ground, so they got here
yeah.
some way.
So I think that we really should start to hone in a concept of um, utilizing our brains, thinking about this. We might not have all of the information, but we can see the just how history has, the course of history, and we can already make some educated assumptions that it wasn't all white in England, and it wasn't all black in Africa, and it wasn't all Asian in Asia.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
important because Tim,
Go ahead.
the point for me isn't to argue with you. The point was
Right,
to examine what you're saying because it's not just you, right? It's
right,
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
if you as a black man feel that way, and you're not the only one, like it's because of what we got used to, right? It's because of what we were
Exactly.
fed in our media and the environment, right? And so when something is different, it can be uncomfortable. And
Right.
at least you know enough to be like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable because of this. A lot of other people don't even examine it and they just
Precisely.
hate on it and don't examine why. Like, oh, I don't like Bridgerton. It's it's just it just
Right.
doesn't feel good to me, right? And I'm like, well, why is that, right? Like I told you, I knew someone that again didn't want to go see Black Panther because it wasn't really their thing, right? But you watch all the other Marvel stuff, right? So hey, maybe examine
Yeah.
yourself as to why all of a sudden the Black Panther movie doesn't feel like it's kind of your thing, but everything
Right.
else is, right? Like doesn't mean you're a racist, right? It means, but you do need to examine why that's uncomfortable for you, right?
Yeah.
And it's because of something you're used to, not because something is correct or incorrect, right?
Right.
And so I
Right.
think these things like this that go maybe too far the other way in quotes, I think it's important because it puts us more in that different place to then feel differently and kind of examine how we're feeling about it, um, which I think it is a good thing overall. And maybe at some point we can get back to accuracy if we ever want to get there.
Yeah.
But it's only ever for entertainment purposes. And so if it looks one way for a certain period of time, it's because that's who it was made for, to make those people enjoy watching it and not feel uncomfortable.
Right.
I think another thing,
But it
Tim, yeah, go
also.
ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Now I was just
Go ahead.
thinking, yes, we could make it more accurate, but I think at a point, I know for myself, I don't always feel like seeing like slaves and people being
Right.
treated badly and dealing with
Yeah.
racism. Like, yeah, it's accurate, but and sometimes cool, that's what it's about. I'll watch it, but I just don't always feel like being in that place just because that's the accurate place to be. Sometimes I just want to have fun at the movies and not think about those particular things sometimes. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean,
That's why we got to make movies of you know that like yeah, I agree. I don't always want to see slaves. Okay, it's like, oh yeah, this is a happy. Oh, look at the slaves in the background. I don't want to see that. Okay, but but like like I guess sometimes you go to you like when if someone says, hey, like we're gonna make like a period piece or something, right? Okay, if you're gonna make a period piece, then think about like what the society actually looked like back then. Yes, there of course it was black folks around, okay, because it was rich black folks. I'm not gonna sit there and act like all black folks were just they was either Africans or they was poor, or poor in African or poor in
or
whatever.
Caribbean.
They Yeah, but when I say African, I'm talking about the whole I'm talking about African descent. Sorry. So, um, you know, like I'm not gonna act like they was all just poor. So, um, so of course it was black folks that was rich, but but if it was rich black folks and then there were other black folks out there too, and I'm not saying that like I want to focus on them, but like I don't want to act like they just didn't exist. It's like
But that's what the
ev-
other. This was my point, was that that's what the movies previously were showing. Is just that they didn't
like
exist, and I have heard, not just from you, but I have heard from other people that they they will argue. Black people will argue, oh, black people weren't in those types of positions, or they weren't there, and at that time. And before I even had done this research, I was like, that doesn't actually make any sense. Just logically, that doesn't make any sense. It's almost impossible, especially with the slave trade going. It's almost impossible that there weren't black people there, and it's almost impossible that every single black person was kept down. Like even in America, um, it was like divided, right? So the South, okay, you'd be hard pressed to find some black person in a position of power, but I think even so there were, and then in the North, obviously, you were able to find a lot more black
yeah,
people in
I
power. So it's almost impossible that that's the case. So the question is, why is it that they were so comfortable portraying just a whitewashed a whitewashed culture back then, but then now that we're trying to include what was probably more accurate, while Chris is saying, not completely accurate, they're trying to show something that's more accurate, and then now all of a sudden that there's pushback.
it's probably because because like people have this thing of excess. So it's like like sometimes and this is what I was saying, and my bad analogy when I said Sesame Street. Okay, it's like they say, hey, let's add all the nationalities, and then like all the nationalities, they just you know, and then like especially with like with black people, right? Okay, so let's say all these black rich people were in in Europe during that time, right? And say that they had generational wealth. Where are all those families now?
Tim, I think you're getting back
What happened to
to
those
the
people?
accuracy argument, which I think we
I know,
we
yeah, I
ceded.
am. I keep going
Yeah,
back to the accuracy. Sorry.
like it doesn't have to be accurate, right? It's just for enjoyment. But I think a lot of people fall back to the accuracy piece as a way to express just discomfort with it not being what they're used to seeing. But because again, no one's saying, "Hey, this show is historically accurate." Like this
Right.
show
No,
is
no
for
one's saying
fun,
that.
right? But
Yeah.
people complain that it's not accurate when it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun, and that's why
But
it's
it's all
Yeah, I get
supposed
it.
to be, but what they're trying to do, even if they're not trying to be accurate, which they never claimed, even if they're not trying to be accurate, they're trying to showcase England in a light that was more accurate than Jane Austen, right? Even if they kind of seem to be going, swinging the entire opposite way, right? They're still just trying to be even closer, because at this point, I don't know if we'll ever know what is really accurate, because we're getting all of these new, all this new information and stuff like that. We don't know if Queen Charlotte was actually really black. She looked like it from her paintings, but we don't know. This Dido seems to be really black. So that was the thing. We don't know where the rest of her family is, but still, these are quote unquote proof that they were still there, even if they weren't there
Hmm.
in abundance. They were still there. And to completely omit this, and this is the problem that I have, to completely omit this in older films, in books and stuff like that, is really is egregious to me, because I think it's you're literally purposefully omitting ethnicities. And then we get to this stage where we're at now, where we're arguing again amongst ourselves whether we actually existed back then. Like,
Well,
it's so weird. And I don't care for that. I don't care for that, especially like now, this is coming out in Black History Month. Like, black people need to know. I feel like maybe this is one one small piece of like the entire puzzle that Black people need to work on. But they need to know that they weren't just slaves. You know, they weren't just slaves, and they were all over the place. Obviously, like I mean, they weren't just in Europe either. They were in Ireland and Scotland as well. You know, and there's like a huge story about Black Scottish people. You know, like they were everywhere. So like I feel like Black people need to be more, and not just Black people, but it is Black History. Excuse me, it is Black History Month, so we're focusing on our Black people, but like also other ethnicities. Like we were all over the place. It was a it is a multicultural, multi-ethnic ethnical globe, like world. You know, in every corner of the globe, there were multiple cultures. Some less prevalent than others. So, for example, in the Nordic countries, there were probably far less Black people there than white people, but for very obvious reasons. One of them probably just being the freaking cold.
Yes, it's cold.
Nah.
There ain't very many Black people who gonna want to go to that
You're
cold.
not gonna have nobody come from the Caribbean or from Africa.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But but they were still there. There were some that were there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like, yeah.
So I guess so. I think like as far as like Black people being all over the place, we agree on that. That's not the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we're just talking about two halves of the same tomato. Mine is more of I'm looking at the green half of the tomato, the half of the tomato with the green spot, and you're just looking at the regular side of the tomato. I'm saying that yes, there were Black folks in England, but it wasn't to the same amounts. You know, they wasn't all doing the same things, and it wasn't to the same amounts as what you see. You know, and you know, I would never deny that there was not Black affluent people all around the world, because there was, but it wasn't to the same amounts to that they show. And I know the show is not trying to be accurate, but when you're used, like you guys were saying, when you're used to seeing, you know, stuff like, you know, the other Jane Austen period pieces, right?
Right.
And even in those period pieces, there were, you like when they show like I think when they show like the dancing area, the dancing hall, I have to look it up. But there were Black people in there. They just wasn't characters of the movie. They wasn't main characters. And in my mind, that's kind of how it was. Yes, there were Black people around. They were rich people, but they wasn't like out there. They was out there, you know, keeping, you know, making sure, you know, they was there for business reasons.
Let me ask you
It
a
wasn't
question.
like Bridgerton.
Let me ask you a question to that. I just told you that Jane Austen actually started writing she started. She's dead. So before
Yeah,
she died, she wrote
before
this.
she
She
died.
was writing this book that one of her, the only book that she had ever started writing that included a Black character.
Yep.
Would have claimed that that was inaccurate or
No,
incorrect?
I don't know, because it depends on how they wrote the character in. If they wrote the character in like this person never knew any racism, and they never they like they don't know, they act like they don't know that all Black people in this country are not equal because of affluence, you know? If they
But
act like they didn't
Bridgerton
know
doesn't
that,
do that though either.
no, I'm
Bridgerton,
saying if she wrote a
they
character, then
it,
I don't feel
well, I don't know what you said because it cut out. But in
no.
Bridgerton, they do acknowledge that there is a racism,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's not. So they talk about in the first season where the Duchess, I forgot her name. I know her name, but I forgot. Was talking to the Duke of Hastings and telling him, you know, we got in this position. Basically, it's made up, but still, she was like, we got into this position because Queen Charlotte, she's black, half black or something like that, or black or whatever. And since she married the king, we were brought into before then we were all looked down upon and stuff like that, right? So she does mention I mean, they do mention that, and I guess in the second season, which completely eluded me because whatever. But so they're not saying that racism doesn't exist. They mention it, but it's not a huge part of the story. Which is the same thing that you're saying for Jane Austen. For what I'm thinking, you're saying, yeah, there might be a few black people in there, but are like a couple black people in one scene, but they're not a huge part of the story. So it would be the same situation, except in Jane Austen's or whatever, there was probably far more black people around. According to what I researched, there's far more black people around, so you would have seen them, a lot of them, like in stores and stuff like that, and they were friends with white people as well.
Hmm.
So you would have seen them. They
England was a
just
little
didn't write
different.
about it, and the only
Yeah.
reason why they didn't write about it, not because it didn't exist, they didn't write about it because of how the industry worked at the time. So if they had written about it, um, and it showed black people in a particular positive light, then they wouldn't have sold it because they would have said that it, or they probably wouldn't have sold it because they would have said it wouldn't sell well. It's just the way that they wanted the industry to run. That is the reason why you don't see black people. This is the reason why you see a white Moses, um, in the Ten Commandments, and then every single freaking Israelite is white. Like, this is the reason why. It's
Yeah.
not because it's historically accurate. It's just
It's
because
because it
of
was
how
made
it
in
was
America.
operating at the time. It's because of racism that
It's
it
because it
was
was
at the
made in
time.
America.
No, it was
So here's another
racism.
theory. Here's another thing I used to think when I was younger, right?
Hmm.
I used to read with some of the books I would read, right? Or start to read. And I would like, I'm not
I'm
gonna
in that
lie,
club too.
right? I would tell myself in my head that I know, even though they're not describing some of these people are black. There's just not just there's no description of them.
Right.
It's just like this person and their sister. Yeah, okay, of course. By the things they do, by the things they say, sometimes you can tell, or how people in the book treat them, you know. But like sometimes when that book is translated into a movie, they just omit those characters. Those characters do exist sometimes in the books, but they just omit those characters, or they make or they just turn them white. They just
Right,
make them
which is
white.
exactly what I'm saying.
So
So
some of
if
those characters that we see on screen are supposed to be black, but
listen,
they're not.
let me tell you, speaking when you now that you're talking about like writing and stuff like that. So I like to write, and when I was writing back in the day when I started writing, when I write, I have an image in my head, and everything that I was writing, every person that I was writing was white in my head, right? And this is when I was a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, I don't know when I realized it. It was after a number of years. I realized, I was like, why every time I imagine a character and stuff like that, this person has to be white? Um, and then that's when I realized that I don't know what it was that happened. It's just all that I saw on TV, all that I read in a book. So that's
Mm-hmm.
all that it became,
Uh-huh.
you know? So then I had to tell myself specifically, this character is black. This character is native. And I had to force myself. It's not really, well, yeah, because like you have to retrain. I had to retrain my mind. I had to retrain my mind. This person is Native American. This person is Asian American. This person is Indian, and stuff like that. I had to start changing it because in my mind it had already been ingrained in that anything that's going to sell, or anything that I'm going to write or something, they have to be a white person. I don't know why that is. And it's also interesting, there was this Instagram, I think it was on Instagram or something like that, about some girl who was complaining because she wasn't white or something like that, or about her doll or something. I can't remember what it was now,
Mm-hmm.
but like, you got kids that grow up thinking this is the way it is because this is all they're seeing. This is all that they're talking about, and the only time they talk about Black history is on in February out of 12
Right.
months out of the year. You know what I mean? So like,
Mm-hmm.
our Black people are being trained to think, at least if I'm going to use myself as an example, being trained to think that white is the only thing. And then, like, for example, the LGBT community, like, we all know that racism exists, but it really exists in the LGBT community, where they're like, they don't want any black people, they don't want any Asian people, and then a bunch of other stuff, which is absolutely ludicrous. I can't believe that they put like I just whatever. Anyways, like they are very. It's very like they're like white is beautiful sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't understand. And the sad thing is, I was subject to that, and I hadn't questioned it for many years out of my life. Right? This is what my problem is. My problem is they're omitting it. They're acting like it doesn't make a difference. And then when other people are coming behind them, trying to adjust it, even if it was just for entertainment, they're trying to adjust it. And then all of a sudden we have a problem with that. But we didn't have a problem with the fact that they were whitewashing it in the first place. Like I watched the 10 Commandments. It didn't even dawn on me that the guy was white.
Yeah.
Like I watched this and like it wasn't until, I don't know, years afterward, and when they were like talking, well, who's it? Charles Heston, I think it was, when they were talking about it, and they were like Charles Heston in the 10 Commandments,
And
and
they all have like English accents too, like ridiculous.
well, in addition that they all spoke English, right? So
no, I mean like English, like
but no,
European accents.
no, Charles Heston didn't have an English accent.
No,
I don't think.
Oh, they didn't. I thought I heard a lot of European accents.
Is Charleston Heston?
I mean, a lot of that people read the King James version and assume that that's how they talked back in the Bible times, which makes no sense, exactly. Right? It's just makes no how that version was written. But anyway,
yes, exactly.
Yes, that's a whole nother deal. But look, folks, we can go on for another 3 or 4 hours, but I appreciate the time today. We got into it, folks that listened. Please comment. Let us know what you think.
Yes.
Who's right?
Yes, please.
Nate.
No. Who's right?
No, because who's right, who's wrong.
Thumbs up for Tim, thumbs down for Nate. Let us know how you feel about it.
But please do let us know how you feel about it. What you think. And
what you think about this topic.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm gonna put some questions in the Spotify. So put some questions and maybe a poll and see you all can respond to that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's been fun, guys. Those who are listening, thanks for being with us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app out there. Again, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all that good stuff. We're on all the socials. Find us out there. We're unofficially opinionated. Leave us a comment, DM, message, whatever. We will respond. As always, thanks, Nate, for your hard work, video and audio editing. Sometimes it gets a little hectic, but you make it through. Thanks, Tim, for the graphics. He does our thumbnails and all of our other stuff. He made this logo we have here, which is pretty awesome. Thanks also to Jaden for the music. And as always, it's been a good time, guys. Bye, Tim.
Bye, Tim.